And no one of us knows where it is going. We do not. We can try to pretend that we can control that. We don't know. There's data coming that we have no clue is on the table yet. And that is fine. It is more a matter of how we react to it and how we use it and bank it and keep it in our minds so that we can use it to our advantage later.
Hello and welcome to the Unlock Lab. I am so glad you're here. We have an amazing episode for you today. I have a conversation with Pat Dwyer that is sure to make you laugh, make you think, and make you more hopeful about what's around the bend. Today, we're talking about how to leverage chaos and uncertainty in your favor. How do we have the mindsets that serve us? How do we have the approach that serve us? How do we take the leaps that we know we want to take and trust what's going to come out in the end? Like, we talk about all this and more, really grounding in Pat's journey in his career. And it ranges from getting in an RV to living in West Africa to standing on stages as a comedian with powerhouse comedic organizations. I think he has such a beautiful lens. And I think there's something to offer you here to plant a seed in your heart and in your mind about how to keep moving forward, even when we're not sure what's happening right now or what's going to happen in the future. And if you're new to the podcast, I'm Tosca DiMatteo, and I'm the founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting. And I do content, coaching, keynote speaking at the intersection of personal growth and professional breakthroughs. I help you get out of your own way, and I help you think deeply about what you need to look at in order to have that exponential growth that you're looking for. If you want to learn more, visit CoachTosca.com. That's CoachTosca.com. All right, so before I dive into this conversation with Pat, here's a little bit about who Pat is. So for over 2 decades, Pat Dwyer has captivated and motivated audiences worldwide, pulling from his background in improv and sketch comedy with legendary institutions, the Second City, IO Theater, and ComedySportz, among others. Pat has merged these talents in training and performance with the strategic mindset he cultivated during the early days of working at notable Chicago startups like Groupon and Ignite. As you could guess, Pat's journey has since lent him an opportunity to help organizations all around the globe find their own unique blend of leadership and team-enhancing effectiveness. Now, as a sought-after speaker at conferences, events, and association meetings, and of course here on this podcast, Pat brings his energetic, hilarious, and wildly engaging approach to both personal and organizational resilience. And ooh, how I love that word, resilience. He's definitely a speaker you don't want to miss, as Pat Dwyer is easily your most engaging route to people-driven innovation and change. And the crowd goes wild. Pat, long way of saying thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to share your messages with the world. I'm excited to dive in.
And I am stoked to be here. Thank you for having me. This is great. This is great.
And thank you for being here, because you know what? We met over LinkedIn. I reached out and I was like, hey, I know you're speaking in the area soon, and I'm just excited to get to know your content. And you offered to have a virtual conversation with me, which is so heartwarming, because that's what I love to do. When I'm making connections, it's about who is this person? Sometimes I scroll through LinkedIn and I'm like, oh man, I don't really know who that person is. Probably somebody early on, because I've made it real conscious effort to say, I want to know the people that are in my virtual network. And so I'm curious, because a lot of people, especially solopreneurs and people in these spaces, are very careful about how much time they're spending one-on-one and meeting people. So I'm just curious with you don't know what was going to come of this conversation. You didn't know we were going to be on this podcast. So have you always been just generous, and have you struggled with getting burned from your generosity? I'm just really curious about this piece.
Yes. Well, let me say this. LinkedIn, I think we can all agree, is the highest form of friendship. There's nothing better than LinkedIn. Just finding randos and being like, oh, we kind of do something that is the same, right? Can we be friends? That's the highest of the forms. That's it. Easy. I think that for me, have I been burned? Yeah, absolutely. That happens occasionally. I don't think it is frequent. So a long time ago, somebody told me that if you just ask, people will say yes. And turns out there's actual data behind that. I have discovered there about 80% of the time, people will just say yes if you ask them a question or to help you or to be with you in some capacity. People crave people, it turns out. Well, there are those of us who do not. I think after a series of shows, a series of programs, I don't want to deal with anybody for a while. Nevertheless, there's part of us that want to be with each other. And I think in knowing that, it lets us ask a question that we might not have asked. Like, hey, do you want to grab a metaphorical beer and metaphorically talk on the Zoom? I guess we're not metaphorically talking. We're quite literally talking. But yeah, I'm metaphorically drinking. Actually, no, I'm also quite metaphorically not metaphorically drinking. I'm drinking right now is what we're saying. This is Kahlua and coffee. This is what's happening.
Yes. Oh my God, I love it. I won't state for the audience like what time it is. No.
It's exactly 10 in the morning. We're having a great time, and I'm not really drinking. Or am I? I'm not, but I totally am not. Also, yes, I totally am. No, no.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So, you know what? First of all, thank you for that. I think that we often hold ourselves back from asking the question out of fear of rejection, out of fear of somebody's going to think we're silly or being too bold in our ask. And so I love this reminder that, you know what? Like people do say yes a lot of times. And if they're not responding, it might just be they didn't see the email or they're buried. Because we tell ourselves stories of the contrary, right? We tell ourselves like the worst possible story of like, what's possible here. And also just to honor not everybody is as generous as you and has that perspective of like just say yes. So thank you again and for that reminder that, you know, maybe people are more generous than we think they are.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, also truthfully, like, I'd rather live in a bit of a world that says yes every once in a while than the one that mostly says no. But I am a cynical person. I like to operate and function as if I'm not, but I like to run worst case scenarios because if you run as many worst case scenarios as possible, you're never truly disappointed. Is it a mental deficiency? Perhaps. I'm not sure. Uh, has it affected relationships? Oh, sure. But nevertheless, I do like to operate in a world that could say yes versus
Yes.
one that definitely will say no.
Yes, yes. And you know what? It's funny because every time that there is a yes or there's a continuing of a conversation, it always just brings me joy. Like I don't take that for granted. Yeah, but I don't know if I'm cynical more so I can get really jaded or I can get in my moods of like nothing's happening. So nobody's gonna respond to this. But
Yep.
I digress. I think we're in a time of year too where like we're jumping back into like our goals and we often need other people in that pursuit. And so we just can't forget that we can't do it alone and that it's okay to ask. And it's also okay to get a no or be ghosted or get rejected because that's part of the process too.
I would add on top of that, not only that we can't do it alone, but we don't have to.
Right.
I think that's for me is the mental differences of I'm always like, I don't need people. I can do this, but I got this. But I don't have to do that all the time. And I think that's why me coming up in the world of improv comedy was always fun because people said to me, like, oh, Pat, if you want to do comedy, which was not on the radar, but Pat, if you're going to do comedy, why don't you do stand-up? And I never wanted to be I didn't want to be the only person on stage, but I also didn't want to be wholly responsible for what was happening because if it went bad, I didn't want to have to only blame myself. Like perhaps that's my failing. It's a stand up. If it goes bad, like that's on you. Totally your fault. If it's improv, there might be something that's not your doing. It likely still was my fault, but nevertheless, it could have been not my fault. So I think like that team mentality of let's work together, let's build something beautiful, let's bring more to the table than just one person can bring was always so intriguing to me. But I think that can be carried over into this larger conversation of putting yourself out there in a way, but also you don't need to do it alone. You can bring more to the table because if everyone is an encyclopedia of their own experiences, you can have more people bringing more data to the pile. And then you get so much more out of it ultimately, anyways. I just think that's cool. I love that. That's my favorite part.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? I love to find out like the origin stories because for a lot of people, it's a struggle to ask for support, to know that it's a birthright, to know that like things get better that way, especially when we're so addicted to kind of comparison and being like, oh, they're in my lane or I'm in their lane. And so how can I be successful here? Is this something that was indoctrinated into you, like team efforting and like just reaching out? Or is it something that was like a hard fought thing for you to learn in your life?
I don't know that answer. I know that I really always loved the good sports team, but I was never really good at the sports. I don't actually remember this. I remember my parents telling me about this and kind of making fun of me for it. I was goalie in soccer and like, I don't know, I think it was probably 5 or 6, I think is probably what it was. But the ball hit the crossbar and landed in my arms and everybody celebrated me like I saved the goal. And that was probably like my highest sports achievement. And, as 6-year-olds go, like I'm pretty much nailing it from there on. But my wife is extremely competitive and did a lot of sports. And we always had this friction where she bought me a t-shirt years ago that said, I just hope everybody's having fun. But it's in the local sports team's colors. And that is kind of where I'm at with like competition side of team, but from a perspective of building and making things greater because of team. I'm always in that lane. That's always where I'm at. And was that easy? No, I don't think that some finding things like that is easy. I do think that like I did improv long enough to understand its value and understand that it is bigger than one person and it can be bigger than one person. And it's more fun to have it be bigger than one person because everybody gets to play a game and introduce a game, and then everybody gets to play on top of each other from an improv perspective. But taking that into the corporate world, when I was leading teams for corporate stuff, it was always more of we all have different jobs within the group. One of us will have to ultimately make a decision, but no one's stronger than anybody else. No one is more important than anybody else. I think about it like Voltron. For those of us who remember Voltron, for those who don't, Power Rangers. For those who don't, I don't know. What's those dogs that are police officers and stuff? Don't they have
Oh,
machines?
Paw Patrol?
Paw
No,
Patrol? Is that a thing? I don't
I
know
don't know.
what they do. I haven't actually seen that show, but I'm assuming if dogs can be a police officer or a fireman, they can also have vehicles that work together. I'm not sure. So it's like those kinds of things, except maybe Paw Patrol. And it builds on top of itself. So like eventually everybody brings something to the table and you've got a big monster walking around instead of just like one individual. And I think that is the coolest thing about team for me in a corporate environment, because I think often with corporate, we say and suggest and think, just do your job, just do your job, just get through the day, which I think is fair too. Just get through the day. Are they paying you for your ideas? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. But nevertheless, we want to just check in and check out, and it's not our life, but we're there more than we aren't. So why don't we make it our life and make it the thing we want it to be in that way?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much richness in what you just shared. And first of all, I find it fascinating as improv origin story, right? That you have that team is a part of it. So I actually want to just go back a little bit
Okay.
and understand like how you landed in comedy. Like, because that is not a track for the faint of heart. And having the gumption to be like, I'm gonna go after that. So help me understand how you landed in the comedy space before even you entered into the corporate landia that we were just talking about.
Honestly, I had no desire or thought. Desire's not right. I guess it was always probably back here somewhere. I never thought of comedy as a career. I never thought of comedy as a job, even. Had studied politics and international relations at school. I really wanted to go join the State Department. I wanted to go into work as an ambassador or an envoy or someone that helped people kind of come together on a more global scale. That was my aim. And I was in the Peace Corps just to join the Peace Corps, live somewhere else, see what the world was like. The underlying mantra for the Peace Corps is that it is the toughest job that you'll ever love. And I think that is wholly accurate. Also, I almost died when I was in the Peace Corps and I still like it. So I think it's actually true too. I got dysentery 3 times in a row. For those of you who don't know what dysentery is, Also, Tosca, yeah, I don't know if do you know what the cemetery is? I mean, other than like Oregon Trail, the video game.
I mean, no, I think it's something that messes with your digestive system, right? Is it like,
Yeah, it's all the things. So, well, I'll just say somebody doesn't clean their hands after using the lavatory, and that gets into
right?
food. When your body has that, it tries to get rid of that by all and every means necessary. And that is every possible thought and direction that is in your brain right now is exactly what happens. It's not great. People die of it all the time. And I got it 3 times in a row. I am a larger man. I lost 60 pounds in a month and a half, which for me was a pretty significant, I think for most people, it's a pretty significant debt, but also a month and a half. I started losing motor function because I wasn't getting enough nutrition. It was not great. And then I got it again. And then I got it again. So the Peace Corps, it was an interesting decision to send me home, that it probably wasn't going to work out. And I was to go back in a different country. I was in West Africa, so it was very, very hot. It was the Sahara Desert. So it was about 130 degrees on a colder day,
Oh
which
my
is
gosh.
great fun. And my little New England body that was just not like, I'm the whitest of the white guys, friends. Like, this is not built for me. I'm a forest people, if you will. It's not that, like, it's just not any Hoosiers. I got so sick that I was sent home. But while I was in the infirmary before I left, after I started to get a little bit better, I remember very significantly laying in the fetal position and a fly landed on me. And I remember thinking to myself, like, he'll go away first. Like, that's where I was at with like moving at that point in my life. And eventually, A, the fly left. But B, as I started to get enough better to be goofy, I was making everybody laugh in the infirmary and people were coming to visit and would leave. And I just figured that's what was happening because, we're our own Truman Show. I didn't know what was going on. I only knew what I was experiencing. And somebody came, one of my friends came, his name was Carl. And Carl said, Pat, people are visiting on purpose, right? I'm like, well, yeah, of course they're visiting on purpose. They have to come here. Like, no. I mean, they're visiting because you're making them laugh. Do you see that that's happening? I know you're out of it, but do you see that? It's like, I don't know. You sure? Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, they're coming. What do you mean? What are you talking about? And he was like, this is your escape. Like, you're dealing with what you're dealing with and what you're handling through laughter, but you're also helping all of them escape what they're going through too. That's why they're visiting. If you could do that for the world, maybe that's the thing you should do. And that was such a big conversation, and to wrap my brain around what that meant. But in subsequent conversations, he told me about Second City in Chicago, which is a sketch and improv based theater, pretty well known. Lots of bigger people have come out of there, and I didn't really know what it was at the time. And then he kind of suggested that I go there, and I kind of thought about it. I mean, I originally was like, no, I'm just going to go back in the Peace Corps. That's how it'll be. And then slowly over time, I thought, I say slowly over time, it actually was like probably a 2-month period, 3-month period. I got back to the States. I was in my parents' basement, just recuperating, watching TV, feeling my brain come back alive, knowing that things weren't so difficult to process as I got more nutrition in my body, as my body stopped fighting itself to be alive. And, any number of doctor's appointments and things like that. And then I moved to Chicago with a duffel bag and a backpack. And I got on the bus and got off and I stayed in a hostel for a little while. I went to Second City, checked it out, figure out what it was. Luckily, there was a new class starting 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. And I signed up for that class. They said, oh, you need a resume. Because what I didn't want to do, for some reason, I didn't want to do the beginner program, which is like a full year of training to learn how to do improv and things like that. I decided I didn't want to do that. I don't know why I had the gumption to think I could do that, but I got into the improv for actors. I'm doing air quotes for those who can't see. Improv for actors, which I put that in quotes because I made up a resume from the time I was in a high school play and gave it to them as I didn't put dates on anything, as if I belonged in that class. It was an accelerated improv study beginner study so you could then get into the conservatory program that's at Second City. And the conservatory program is very serious. You have to re-audition over and over again. They cut people all the time. You don't get to move on. It is, at the time, a grad level program in comedy and the craft of comedy, and to figure out why and how people laugh. Like it's actually studied in that way. It's really fascinating. I figured, why would I want to do the normal route? I'll just do the harder version of this.
I'll just do the accelerator route. Okay,
Oh,
wait a
it's so
minute.
stupid. Well,
I just have to pause. First of all, there's
yes,
just too
sorry,
much
that
here.
was a
Okay.
lot. Yeah, it
No,
was a
no,
lot.
it was beautiful. So I want to rewind a little bit, right?
Yeah.
When it actually didn't take you that long to decide this path is actually like, it grew in your heart as like, yeah, like I think this is it. Did you question it at the same time you were saying yes to it? And did you get support from the people around you, or were they looking at you like, you are crazy pants, Pat? What are you thinking? Like, what was that experience like of just going, forgive the expression, like, but balls out on like this pathway that, your friend thought you should do?
I guess it's a little bit of everything. When I got back, there's actually part of this story that I didn't tell. And that is right before I went to Chicago with the duffel bag. I don't know which election it was in the States, whichever one Howard Dean was in. Because I remember Howard Dean, he went, woo-ha, and he like screamed at the camera and stuff like that, which we can talk about that later. That did not happen the way that it came across in the media at all. That being said, I went to Vermont to work in his campaign headquarters for a minute when I felt good enough to do it. And I was there for a week and decided that it really had to try this comedy thing. Again, politics was the thing that I knew at that point. So I was like, oh, I'll just go try to join a campaign, see what happens. It's almost like the Peace Corps broke me in that way. I needed to see what it was. I needed to figure it out. And I honestly, at that point, I figured like, if I almost died in Africa, what's the harm in trying something for a minute? Like there's only up from there. There wasn't really a challenge after that too. Is it going to work or not? Because at the base level, at least I knew how far I could push my body. At least I knew how far I could go before I actually died. Because I didn't get there and I thought I was going to. So it was not as scary as it probably could have been, knowing where that bar was at that point.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. That piece is important. Actually, it reminds me of an episode I recently did about how to make decisions confidently. And one of the things that I said is like, and it's okay to change our mind.
Oh yeah.
Like, and there's very, very few things that are permanent outside of having a child. There's a lot of things that we can change about our lives, right? And so I love that you share that. You were like, you know what? In that moment, that was the best decision that you could make in your career, in your direction. And you quickly saw that wasn't it. And I'm just saying, for you listening, who's like, I made the bed, now I'm gonna lay in it. No, not you don't. Like, right? Like we have more choice than we give ourselves credit for. And sometimes it can be indoctrinated into us culturally. Our family structure could be like, no, you made that commitment, you gotta do the thing. And actually, no, you don't. But sometimes we don't unlearn those things. And it's in that contrast, I think, that we really see the truth of what we want when we're in situations and we're like, oh, like that's not it. And we can get frustrated because we're like, oh, that's not it. Now what? But it's like, oh, great. Now you have more information about like what's not it for you.
Yeah.
And the unfolding of what is will come if it's not already there. For you, it was already there.
I mean, it's not going to be easy. I don't want to suggest that
Oh,
anything
no.
about that is easy or that it's a fun thing to do necessarily. There are certainly fun moments. I mean, I think the adrenaline starts pumping real hard. But I mean, so what? You lose time, which is important, admittedly. You lose money, which is important, admittedly. You're going to make more money. Time becomes significant when you're doing something significant. And otherwise, you're just waiting. That doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think it's ever really made sense to me, which is a lot of friction I have with, people who were like, why don't you just get a job? Like, yep, that's a fair question.
Yeah, it's like when we're in it and time feels like so slow, but the reality is like it's a freaking blip. It's a blip, right? And we treat it with this, oh my gosh, we have to use every second, every day. It's part of the process, is recognizing like, oh, this path isn't for me. And I always say nothing is wasted. Like nothing is wasted,
Oh,
right?
never.
But we can easily shit all over ourselves for making decisions that we ended up walking away from and to me, I'm like, well, that's just a waste of energy, judging yourself for those choices that you did the best you could in the moment. And the other part of your story that I'm like, I really want to highlight too, right? Is you were like, you know what? Yeah, I just want to skip that phase. I want to move on to this. And you found a narrative, you found a story in your resume that you were like, look, if they want to glomp onto this, hey, it's true. I was in theater, right? Like I did this thing. And so therefore I'm an actor. And so therefore, and I want to pull this out because it is so important to really honor what narratives are possible. We have multiple truths, right? Multiple dimensions. And I think especially women, but there's all kinds of people that just downplay their experience and don't bring it forward and don't like hang your hat on that. If that one little thing, that one little piece of your life is what's going to help you maybe open a door, lean the hell on it. Why not? And I love that you're just like exemplifying, like it's possible to lean on that and let that carry you and see what happens. Like, what's the worst, right? Like,
I was in junior high when I had this revelation. And that's because I was in some sort of like before STEM was STEM, it was like a STEM thing where they give you 20 paper clips, a bunch of popsicle sticks and something else. They're like, go build a shopping cart that can hold this amount of whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. And so it was a group, and it was called Odyssey of the Mind, is what it was. But the rule that they had in that group was don't ask questions that you don't want an answer to. And that for me has taken me really far forward in the sense of, is it misleading if the whole picture is there? Yes, very much so. Is it misleading if all the information isn't learned? Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's a moral gray area here. I want to say that. But if I don't put out a question that needs to be answered, I can still do what I want to and what I think I need to do until that question is answered.
right.
It's sort of like from a political postulate perspective, it's can you commit a crime if you don't know that that is a crime? Like that's out there. Like, can you, if you kill somebody, the horrible example, if you kill somebody and you don't know that that is wrong, like nothing about you knows that that is wrong, did you commit a crime or were you just wrong? And we as a society certainly decide that that is wrong. Collectively, we've decided that. And so that deserves to be punished in a similar way to others who do know that that is wrong. But that's why the insanity plea exists, is so that, if you don't know, like, how can we morally judge someone for that if you don't know that? So the idea of maybe we don't ask all the questions all the time or lead people to want to ask all the questions all the time, maybe that's not terrible.
Well, it's like, it's very similar to something that I believe, which is like, you know what? Don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness later
Yeah.
in certain situations. And like, I totally hear what you're saying, right? Like, do we lie about our experience? No. But do we share, hey, this is truth. And if they want to ask questions, let them ask questions. But here it is. And I think that this example, right, is on that very like, okay, this might be a stretch, but here it is. But I think there's a lot of people out there where they're not stretches at all. They're just people not owning that they have this particular experience and they're telling themselves it's not enough to hang their hat on. And I'm sitting here, and for you listening right now, I'm betting, I bet my life savings that it's enough for you to hang your hat on and just own it and just claim it, So, but I appreciate, because I would never come on this show and talk about, being dishonest. But if we can lean in on things and tell a story from that, and let the questions come. And hey, if that counts us out, fine. But hey, at least you owned it to the extent that you could and figured out if that could work.
100%. It's like when we were writing, so I did a lot of sketch comedy. And one of the things in comedy that we definitely do, it's, true about writing in general. You don't fill in the gray for your audience. So you let them take the story where they need to. You let them fill in the pieces that you're not talking about so that it enriches their experience for them. You can use that in regards to say, I say the word forest, which I did earlier. Every single listener is thinking of a different forest in a different place on a different day. They feel that in their bones. Like they can think of the mist. They can think of the cool of the trees. They can think of the sun shining through. I'm not telling them my experiences where, as I said, I grew up in New England. My forest is very different than somebody's forest who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, for instance.
Right.
Like I mean, them trees is huge. Like that's a different animal. So for me to just say forest, the audience comes to you in a way. Similarly, with this not being misleading, not filling in the blank for your reader, not filling in the blank for the person you're talking to. Let them add what they need to. That's not your responsibility. It's also not in your control. But if you are strategic and purposeful in thinking about it, that's where that gray moral part comes in of like, it's not misleading. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not being dishonest. What does that mean? Where does that go? And I don't know if I have that answer. I do know that the only person that's stopping you is you. The only person that's keeping you from you is, and what you want is you writing that narrative, writing that story, as you were saying before. Like, yeah, totally, 100%.
Yeah, I think that's the more important question, right? Is like, how am I getting in my own way of this thing that I want? Like, how am I stopping myself?
Yeah.
And how am I omitting narrative that might be actually helpful? How am I seeing myself that's actually not in the greatest light, but I'm seeing myself in the most negative or worst light? And how am I bringing that to my conversations? Or how am I bringing that to my energy field and what I believe is possible for myself? Bringing it back to, because you just have like this incredible career path that you took. So you took a leap of faith, right? And you jumped in and you were staying in hostels. You applied for this program. You get it. You're spending years honing this craft, being very successful in a very competitive, very challenging arena. And you made a left turn at another point. Tell me about that next pivot in your career and why that came about.
Sure. Well, it was, so for starters, in talking about my corporate experience, like that was it corporate experience? Absolutely. Was it because I was trying to be an improviser and it was a job in the meantime? Yeah, in a way. Did I invest myself in it anyways? Yeah, because that's the kind of just the person I am. So I was leading teams, I was doing all those things, but it was because I was using it to then go perform at night or on the weekends and things like that. I was full time doing comedy, and then I got a job, and that's when I met my wife. And then I decided to quit that job and just do full-time comedy again, which she was on board with because she's amazing and lovely and wonderful and fantastic. Anyways, so we had children. Don't know if you've heard of those. Hey, friends, children. So we had children, and improv is great. Comedy is great. I was writing TV commercials at that point. I was directing TV commercials sometimes, but again, it wasn't like fueling me. It was fine. It was good. I was having a blast doing it, but it wasn't something that I was like waking up to do in the morning. I was waking up to be with the people, I think is really what it was. And improv does not make a ton of money in general. It was good for me. I should say that. I did very well if it was me by myself. And even for my wife, like we did okay. But it wasn't something I wanted to raise a family on per se. And so we started looking around to figure out what was next. And at that point, I was so far away from what I felt was a true corporate experience. Yeah, I had a corporate resume, but it wasn't like I didn't know what I should do. I didn't know what was lucrative. So I met a guy who is part of a group called Vistage in the United States. It's a CEO organization where CEOs can CEO with each other, is basically what I can tell that it is. I'm saying that wrong for anybody who's listening that's in Vistage. I'm not besmirching your organization. It's great. I really like it a lot. But it is a higher leadership, working with higher leadership in other corporations to help each other and themselves. So I met this guy who is one of the larger networkers for that organization and said, like, listen, I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know who I am in this way. I have all of these random skills. What is that could you help me figure out what that is as a job? Because I don't know. And after about an hour, he kept asking me questions. I was talking, and he just stopped. He said, please stop talking just for a second. Stop. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've been speaking for too long. I apologize. I'm so sorry. He's like, no, you're fine. You need to be a speaker. You need to be a professional speaker. That's your job. That's what you need to do. And I don't know what is that job? Is that a job? That's a real job. Are you kidding me? And so he told me about it. He got me hooked up with a woman named Mickey Williams in Chicago, who is a Hall of Fame speaker from the National Speakers Association. And she's lovely. She got me into her How to Be a Speaker class, which after 10 shows a week for 10 years, I did not need the performance side. The performance side, I was good. Like I could connect with an audience all day long. I didn't know the business side of this. And so she was very helpful in helping me realize that I did actually know a lot more of the business side than I thought I did. Because the world of comedy really translates into this whole other world of speaking, which I at the time did not know. She helped me a lot. There's some other great mentors that I've had over time that have really helped me move forward as a speaker. And so now I'm speaking to organizations, corporations, and I'm talking about change, innovation, resilience. I'm talking about this mindset that is improv and comedy and that I've brought forward. It is where it started, but it's kind of turned into something totally beautiful and different, and is very much rooted in humor. And I love it's not like I'm not going to not make people laugh. That's kind of what I love to do. I think that is the gift that I'm able to give to people. I am able to let people escape and think in a different way, or think in the same way, but more effectively because they had time to laugh. I think I said this to you, my friend. I think I'm not a functioning member of society, but I help functioning members of society function better by giving them laughter.
I love it. Yes. And it makes sense. And I just want to pause because like you're just dropping so much wisdom that I want to make sure that the listener is catching it, because you kind of identify your purpose as like making people laugh, right? And that can look like you doing stand up, and it can look like you doing that in any environment, right? And
Yeah.
this pursuit of a, quote unquote corporate job was out of necessity of income that could sustain a bigger family. And that part of that journey was in having conversation and asking other people. And I just want to call that out because a lot of people go in a cocoon and think they got to figure it out and they don't talk to anybody, right? And like even reaching out to network, a lot of people will be like, well, I don't want to do that until I know what I'm looking for and what I'm asking for. And I'm like, no. The point of having conversations is for you to deepen your understanding of what excites you and deepen your understanding of arenas that you have no idea about. And you actively did that, proactively did that to figure out what's next. And it led you to a beautiful place. And then you ended up, right, strengthening certain skills there. And then here you are, you're like 100% full time, right? Speaker slash facilitator, team builder, check all those boxes. And so tell me about that, right? Because you went into that world and then you came back out of it. So how did that come to be too? And how did that going in and then coming out, like, how did that even strengthen your skill set and what you do now? Like, how do you see that as a piece of the puzzle of, where you are now?
Well, I think that I still want to say I struggle with corporate mentality, because I think that's why startups were so nice for me and why I really hung around in the startup space, because there is a hunger and an excitement, and we can do anything. We can do whatever. There are no rules. And also, truthfully, I never wanted to work in an environment that would stifle fun in expense of the product or whatever else, or the fun would be stifled so that the product would be better, whatever that one ended up being, whatever that corporate culture is that stops that stuff from happening. Like I can remember very distinctively once at Groupon, there was a big meeting happening it was like a conference call or something. And me and four other people pretended to row a boat, but by the glass windows, just to mess with all the higher leadership that was in there. And that's not something you can really get away with at, like, let's say JP Morgan Chase. That's not a thing that they're down with. They're usually. Perhaps I am incorrect about their corporate culture. But Groupon at the time was like, let's make a huge cat statue. That's what we'll use our money on. And all of us being in our 20s were like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And that was the kind of thing that I got really good at. So I think now I still struggle with, am I too much for corporate culture? Is this what people need? Am I speaking corporate the way that they need me to speak? And I think there's value to not speaking in that way, certainly. But am I the person that can help by being the person that can access what they need me to access and help with, and all that weirdness is something I'm always struggling with for myself. I think I'm doing it quite well. I mean, I think that, like, in having that experience and sitting in that space for a while and being in on those meetings that definitely should not have been a meeting and needed to be an email, or it could have been any number of, online learning tools. Like, I didn't need to, why are we in this meeting? This is the dumbest thing. Or like, I have a full day of meetings and no time to work. And then the answer is, well, you're on salary, so you do what you have to do. It's like, this is mind boggling to me. But to be able to speak to that world in a way, and also to be wholly not in that world in a way, is a really nice Venn diagram of what can we use with possibility, with potential. And that's, I think, one of the spaces that I don't want to say succeed, because that makes me feel like I'm not being humble or doing a smart thing here. But like, I think, like, I'm able to succeed in a space that others aren't, because I can talk to both of those worlds in a very tangible way. And I really like that about what I get to do now.
Yes. Claim it, own it. Yes. It's like, it's okay that, like, you're a humble guy. Like, you're not someone that exudes of arrogance. So yeah, like, I think we get to claim our gifts. And I love that you share, right? That, like, even today, even after being very successful and still very successful in what you do, that there's still this, like, critic in there, that's like, but am I able to do this? Or do people want me the way that I am? Or do I have to? I'm probably putting some words in the inner critic, but like,
you are not. You are
okay.
doing it right. Yeah, no, that voice is pervasive. It's like, I think of it as a big theater. Like, there's one guy way up in the back of the theater going, boo, like, everyone else could like you, but there's always, and that's the one you think of, that guy, you stink, sit down, idiot. I'm like, yep, fair enough, that's right, I should sit down.
Oh my God. Well, I love that you're sharing that, because, like, we are in spaces that were meant to be and to help people to think differently and, right, to get out of the status quo, to, like, stretch their minds and all that stuff. And I think this goes for whoever is listening and whatever you're doing, right? You're there, you're in whatever environment you are, because you add something to the table that nobody else has, especially in corporate environments, right? Oftentimes the hiring comes from the same kind of places. The thinking is very mirrored. Like, we hire people like us, like all the things. And so we need the outsider. And I think for the quote unquote outsider like us, who comes into organizations like us, who speaks to a certain kind of culture when we're on stage, that because we're on the outside, we can see things different, and then we can open the minds of our audience. And so that is the truth. And that truth in the work that I do, Pat, is what we listen to, not the guy in the stands, right, booing you and telling you, like, what do you think you're doing? And I think we have to come back to the truth and say, why am I needed here? Why are my skills needed here? And really honor that about wherever you are in your journey. And especially coming back, from vacation mode and all the things that are going on just in this moment when this episode is going to launch. Like, remember why you're there. Because I think when we do that, we give ourselves more permission to be more fully ourselves.
Yeah.
And to see what happens when we do that. Because I think it's really magical. The more that we unleash, and if we so I'm getting a little soapbox, but
Don't get it.
I'm at the end.
Oh, I love it.
And if we unleash it, I'd love to ask you about this, actually. Like, if we unleash and we're getting the side eyes, and maybe there's a side conversation, then that also serves us, because then we know that we deserve to be in other rooms where we're actually embraced for that. And I don't know if you ever had that experience where you've gotten the side eye and you've had to be like, well, this place just isn't for me. And that's okay too.
Yeah, I mean, the side eye is kind of my operating space. I'm surprised I met my wife. Let's be honest. Uh, having any opportunity to speak in your voice and hear yourself is always going to get a side eye from somebody, but it's usually has diddly to do about you. That is always about that other person trying to figure out why they aren't doing it or why it's okay that you can, or they're asking questions that have to do with them. They are not asking questions about you. I think that's the thing that is been so hard for me to come to grips with, is that no one is asking questions about me ever. That's not a thing. People don't care. As I said, the Truman Show, everybody lives their own Truman Show. Everybody has their own experiences, their own pile of Legos that they're all playing in to try to figure out what they're building in that moment. And everybody got their own pile of Legos, friends. Like that for me is in realizing that if everybody has their own Legos, they're not actually concerned with my Legos. That's the day that I kind of woke up and was just like, oh, I can do whatever I want. Not in a bad way, not in a malicious way, not to hurt people, but you can do it. It's not your problem what other people need from you. Maybe this is also, it could be now that I'm like older, maybe, like I felt like when I was in my 20s and maybe into my 30s, like there's a lot of concern for what other people think of you.
My hope is that everybody comes to that realization as early on in life as possible to say, like, other people, and to use your metaphor, which I love, other people got their own freaking set of Legos, and that's all they freaking care about. And if they're shitting on you and if they're projecting on you, it's because they're looking at your Legos and they're like, oh man, I really like that piece, or I want that, whatever, or the way they're putting it together. But I love that you say this, right? When the ultimate freedom in our creative expression and the expression of who we are comes when we stop worrying about what other people think about us.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, I think, partly that. And then I think there's also a matter of how do we trust ourselves enough to move in our favor when everyone tells us and everything tells us that that can't happen, because we are ultimately competing with each other in any number of ways. And I think that that comfort of knowing it will come to you is an interesting conversation. Some people call it faith, some people call it hope, some people call it blind optimism. I'm not sure. Nevertheless, I think that the world finds a way to ultimately give you all the numbers that you need to write your equation. You just have to be willing to read the room.
I just want to let that sit for a hot second because that was a mic drop moment right here with Pat Dwyer.
Well, it's been fun. This podcast has been great. See you. Bye.
Yeah, it's, can you read the room? Can you see it? Can you acknowledge what you do have and start with that, and what you are receiving, whether it's in support in the puzzle pieces of our life, and are you willing to take action on that, even, right, even without, maybe you don't see the full picture yet, but you have enough to go on. And it makes me think about another leap that you took in your life during the pandemic. A lot of people don't know because, this audience is not necessarily speaker audience. And so they don't know, right, about like the pandemic hits, nobody's speaking anywhere. Like that whole career goes down the toilet. Yeah. So what happened at that stage? You were like built an amazing business for yourself, and then the pandemic hits and you make some really amazing, bold, courageous choices.
Yeah, it was, my speaking career at that point was going. I think I made the full transition in 2019 towards speaking because of some corporate stuff that happened that I just want to get away from. It didn't go great. I moved into speaking, saying like, let's just take the leap now. Let's just see what happens. And friends, that word, the leap, that seems like that's going to come back a lot. So I'm just going to put that out there right now. COVID happened, and I was growing my business, and it was doubling the year before, and it had doubled the year before. I was like, oh, this is going great. This is great. And then COVID, I think at that point, early in the year, because that was what, March, maybe that all happened.
March. Shutdowns were March.
So I would say in February, I had 15, 20 gigs on the books for the year. I was like, oh, this is great. Everything's going to be perfect. This is things are going better than they've ever gone. And with COVID, I lost all of those gigs. I think one turned virtual, but it was so early on that people were just canceling things at that point. And we decided that I would have to grow the business anyways. There is a little backstory here. My son has a congenital heart defect, and we needed to protect him because where we were living at the time, our neighbors were not wholly convinced that COVID was even a thing. And at the same time, the pediatric doctors were saying kids' hearts could get bigger and explode. You're like, wait, what is that? Because we didn't know nobody knew what COVID was at that point. Like we kind of had an inkling, but nobody really knew. Well, shelter in place was a phrase that was starting at the time. And we knew we would have to shelter in place quite seriously because we didn't know if we could leave the house because we had to keep my son safe. And we decided, what if we didn't shelter in place? What if we sheltered in a place that moved? What if we used this time to see the world? Because we knew we could be outside. Everybody knew that. You could wear masks, but you could be outside. It was safer than being stuck in a room with other people. So what if we bought an RV and what if we just left? So what we ended up doing is we sold everything we had, the house, the cars, the junk that was in the house. Junk's wrong. The memories. Oh, well, we got a pod, one of those pod things. So we put those memories in that, but pretty much downsized from a 4-bedroom house to a RV and one small pod that we just gave to the pod people to like hold on to for a while. And I will tell you, as Tetris goes and like I'm good at that. It turns out I am very good at jamming stuff in a pod, floor to ceiling.
Good to know who to call. Yeah, who to call.
Spatial reasoning skills all day long. Let's do this. Goodness gracious. But we ended up, we bought this RV and we just took off. We saw 30 states in 9 months. We just traveled, kept moving every 4 days. We would just go check out somewhere new every 3 days. Like, okay, cool. We're going to drive. We had a maximum limit of 3 hours that we would drive, except there was one state that we just shot across because it was one that we were really concerned about at the time. Like, oh, we got to get across this state now. So we did that. That was a much longer drive. I think it was like 8 hours that day. That was a long day. But we would go somewhere, we, saw pretty much everything from Ohio straight down to Florida, which we did not spend much time in Florida because Florida was also one of those ones where we're like, I don't know where this is going to go. And then kind of just hung along the Gulf Coast and then zigzagged up and down. We got one across Texas, went all across the West Coast, zigzagging up and down, kind of back towards, at that point, Chicago, Wisconsin area. And it was awesome. It was great. And I got so much out of it. And the original plan was for me to work in the passenger seat while my wife drove. Now, to remind you, we had a 40-foot RV and a 20-foot car hauler on the end of it. So this was like a big rig size thing that was happening. And my wife, after day 2, I said, cool, it's your turn to drive now that we've gone a little ways. And she said no, just outright said no. So we decided that I would work when we weren't driving. And work was like, let's try to keep building a business that we didn't know existed at that time or would again or had any timeline for. What ended up happening, though, was that driving and moving and all that stuff was the most cathartic business experience I could have had in my entire life. Because what I did was took that time to realize who I am as a person, more importantly, who I am on stage as a person. Because on stage is almost a hyper-realistic version of myself anyways. But if I could combine the brand of my business with the thing that I did really well on stage for 15 years, what if I took that and made that the brand? What would that mean? What could that be? And post-COVID, it went nuts. It's been great. I mean, I really found the sweet spot for me of like people know who I am. They know what the business is. They know what I do. They know what I bring to the table. When I was in Chicago, the place that I really did really well as characters on stage acting like a dingus was what we would call chaotic good, of that those squares of like what are each of the personality types. and what are each of those character types. Chaotic good is really where I live. Like it's fun, it's playful, it's goofy. It's also based in happiness and goodness, versus chaotic evil, which is the other end of that spectrum, I suppose. But chaotic good has become the brand for my business. And it is because of that time in the RV where I had to just sit and use it and learn. We used the shelter in a place that moves purposefully to continue learning. My family, we love learning in general. My wife and I take it very seriously. We really like that. I'm not like reading books all the time, but I'm that dork that takes his phone out to like look up something that I don't know almost immediately. And to have my daughter, who was a little older than my son, come back from her school the next year when we did end up going back and getting a house and all this other stuff. When my daughter came back from school and was like, Dad, you remember when we were on that corner and it was hot and there was this lady who was on a bus, but she was just like, she got asked to get off the bus in that corner. You remember that? I'm like, where Rosa Parks got off the bus? She was like, yeah, we learned about that today in school. And for having my daughter, who I think at the time was in second grade, to have visceral experiences with history, with the things that she would then be learning in school, that was worth it. That one thing made that totally worth that to me. I'm a big history nerd anyway. I'm, politics, come on, gang. But to have visceral experiences with history, with the stories that are humanity, that's cool. That is the best version of learning you can have, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my gosh. I love this story. First of all, I think you're the first person I've met that like actually was an RV person family, like during the pandemic. Like you just heard about them on the news. And it's like, oh my
Yeah,
God. Did you not shoot a documentary during that time? But anyway, missed opportunity, I think. But there's so much I just want to like name in this, right? Which is making a decision that, again, you felt was in the best interest of your family at the time, not really knowing what that was going to mean, but being optimistic and hopeful about it. And also, right, like seeing benefits that you couldn't have imagined. Like the day that you packed up your stuff, you probably couldn't have imagined the feeling that you got when your daughter was able to like connect dots between lived experience and the history she was learning in school. And I think that's so important to just pause on, because when we take action towards our dreams and we take what we see as risks because we don't know how it's going to land, that the beauty in that, when we are making choices from our aligned truth, that it becomes magical because we have no idea what's actually going to result from that. We may have hypotheses, we may have hopes, but that we have no idea what happens when we just trust ourselves and trust our gut and trust the direction. And I think you just have such a pattern in your life of trusting yourself, of trusting in what you can't see and believing what you can't see. I'm curious. I think you have a framework. Maybe it's a framework for something else, but like, what supports you in these dark times? We've talked a lot about, and I know there's darkness in between all these times, but what are the tools that you use to say, gosh, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I sure am going to stay above board. I'm going to stay above the line, I'm going to stay positive in the pursuit of this or in the trusting of myself. Like, do you have a system that you use or tools in your toolbox that you're like, this is how we're going to just let this ride?
I'm not always great at it. I don't think anybody is. Right? I screw this up too all the time. I fail at this all the time. Positivity is not, I hate that too, because positivity is so loaded. Like optimism is such a loaded, goofy phrase. Like I'm not interested in that. It's more a matter of where is the pain point for me? Where does the pain come from? The pain is the if. It's for me, it is where could it happen? So I think about like a diving board in a swimming pool, right? The scary part is the jump. It's not is the leap. It's not the landing in the pool. Like once you're in the pool, like you just have to figure it out because either you drown or you don't. Like that's a binary choice. But when you're jumping off the diving board of, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, could be this, could be that. That's the part that keeps us from doing stuff. So for me, I try to close my eyes and think about the result versus thinking about the fall, thinking about the ifs as I'm going down. I mean, there are certainly ifs to be had because you have to plan. You absolutely need to do that. I know that the more that I can leap, the more data I get, the better off I'm going to be. Sometimes I'm high, sometimes I'm low. The framework is the idea of a tilt, and tilt being a seesaw, right? Like back and forth. And if you are at the height of that seesaw, you get the cool view, you get to see everything. Everybody's like, oh my God, your life is so great. You're like, okay, I guess, I don't know. Because you, again, you live in your own world. You do have a wonderful chance to see things that you've never seen before. But sometime the seesaw is going to go back down. Somebody's going to get off of it. Yeah, sometimes you slam down. Sometimes it's a gradual downward. But every time you learn something, every time you do something, every time you gain something like a level up in a video game, you put something else on the other side of your seesaw to level you out a little bit more. So the more that you work, the more that you take a chance, the more that you take a leap, the more that you discover something that you have no understanding of discovering or how to discover or if it's even possible, the more you get to put on the other side of that seesaw. So eventually you're up more often than you're down. And eventually you, at the very least, are even. You don't usually get farther down. But if you do, you lean in and you go, cool, I mean, I need to learn. I need some more data here. I need something more to do that will teach me a story or a lesson that I don't have yet to put on the other side of my seesaw so that I can get a little bit higher up. So that idea of a tilt and always tilting our lives towards what we want it to be by learning, by growing, by having experiences, and by saying yes to things that we probably wouldn't normally say yes to because we are working towards the data, we're working towards the goal, we're not working towards the end result. Because again, like that Lego pile, right? If we're thinking about those Legos, every time you learn something, you get more Legos. Every time you have a new experience, you get a Lego. So a house that was able to be built at the beginning is a very different house that is able to be built at the end. And the more that we learn, the bigger that pile of Legos gets, the more stuff is on that seesaw. It's the same metaphor.
Oh my gosh. I love all of that. I love how you talk about it. I love the imagery of that. And now I'm like, I want to get on a seesaw because it's been a hot minute.
Sure do.
I might
Yeah.
need to find one, right? I just can't help but think about even your journey, right? Of like how you built over the years, right? And what you've added to the seesaw on the other side to even it out. And I'm often talking about we have a roller coaster life until we decide that we're going to build our skill set and our tools to like smooth that out a little bit. So the highs aren't so crazy and the lows aren't so crazy, especially on that emotional journey, right? And there's a lot of tools in the toolbox for that. And I think that your lens that you're bringing to this tilt is the experiences and the skill set. Imagine if we just combined like the emotional, right, evening with the like experience evening and like, oh my God, maybe we need to co-write a book. But
Oh, let's do it. That'd be fun.
would that be fun? Like like it's almost like the doing side and the being side, right? And how we even that out. I think life happens on a pendulum. We're seeing the pendulum live and in color on a huge stage. And it takes time for us to figure out, well, how do we not go to extremes when we don't like this or we don't like that, but like find that middle way, if I could borrow, the Buddhist Dharma, like, because then I feel like from that place, we get to find more peace, less inner conflict within ourselves. I love that framework. Thank you for sharing. More to come, I think, on this, right? Dot, dot, dot.
There is many dot dot dot. Yeah, it's always fun to keep building things.
Again, thank you for your generosity of time. And as we're kind
Yeah.
of winding things up, trying to find the threads here, we've talked a lot about trusting ourselves. We've talked a lot about trusting the pieces that come our way, being able to see the things that come our way so that we can acknowledge and find the hope and the path forward in those little pieces. I think we've talked about taking risks and seeing what's on the other side of that. And oftentimes it's something even more magical. I mean, when I think about you saying yes to comedy and being a part of incredible organizations in comedy to stepping into corporate and realizing, yeah, but this isn't where I want to stay, and the gifts that you learned in what those environments are so that you could speak to them from the outside, to jumping in an RV, not knowing, God, there was so much uncertainty in the world, let alone with your career, and then seeing the gifts in what you learned. And now, right, embarking upon this deeper understanding of who you are, and how you show up and how you help people and how you serve people, and coming back to trust that yes, you are exactly the right person in these environments that maybe you wouldn't want to be on the other side of, but that you can help break something loose for them. And all of that with this thread of levity and this thread of humor and this thread of like, how can we see the positive, the good, the goodness in the chaos that is life, that is our ups and downs, that is our tilt, that is our seesaw and our roller coaster. So, yeah, I'm just trying to tie these threads together. And I'm curious as I'm doing that, like, if there's anything you want to add to that, or this aha you want to share, or just something that maybe we've missed along the way.
I would just suggest that should is a different conversation than could. And I think we blame ourselves as a should a lot more than we should. I think we could be the thing that we wanted. We could have the thing that we wish we could. It won't be easy, it won't be simple, it certainly won't be quick. But if you're working towards it and if you have it in your mind, I mean, I think vision boards are, I've seen a lot of vision boards. Some of them are a mess, just a hot mess, but they can be useful. I mean, I keep a journal. I like to write down, I'm a big old list taker. I like to keep lists, and I love, crossing off a list. How great is that feeling? Like, yes, I'm just crossing that off. Like, that's like, I've started using Trello, and it's great too. It doesn't have the same, I need the active movement of scribbling on a piece of paper. I love it. But I don't know where it's going. If any of you know where it's going, please tell me how that works. I would love to hear that. It's very similar to me to an improv scene, in the sense that, like, we don't know where it's going ever. And no one of us knows where it is going. We do not. We can try to pretend that we can control that. We don't know. There's data coming that we have no clue is on the table yet. And that is fine. It is more a matter of how we react to it and how we use it and bank it and keep it in our minds so that we can use it to our advantage later. That is the thing that I think we can use from the world of improv that we don't use all the time, is where can we keep these things in our memory and in our bank of useful tools to come to later when the data presents itself, so that it all can make sense eventually. It's sort of like, best metaphor I could do here is a escape room. For those of you who don't like the escape room, you're probably right. Some of them are a mess. There are a lot of them that can be fun. I've only done 2 escape rooms in my life. How is that not a metaphor for life? You're stuck in a room. You don't have the information to get out of that room yet. You have to be okay finding the next clue that leads you to the next clue, that then you ultimately open your door and move to the next room. How is that not life in its own worst and best form? It is a matter of, like, how stacked against you is that escape room. Like, I went to an escape room and we got through it, and we thought we did I got through it as wrong. So we got through the time. We did not get out of the first room. And they came in and we're like, yeah, we felt like we did really well. We got all these clues. And they're like, oh, you weren't even a third through this thing. We're like, what? In an hour? This is too hard. This room is this is not the family accessible room. This is too hard. Does not make sense. So there are rooms that are stacked against us. You will take time to get out of that room, but you have to know that you got to take the time to get out of that room. And that's okay too. It's just, when are you going to find that clue? When is it going to work out? Like video games, like those old adventure video games, that's the same kind of thing, right? Like, sometimes you got to ask the same question to the same guy twice so that you remember what your mission was. but also you missed a clue the first time, so you got to go back and figure it out again. But slowly you get to the next level. That's what this is. That's all of this bullshittery.
Oh my gosh, that was such a beautiful message. What a beautiful, I know I'm going to listen to that a few times, especially, right? Like this podcast is all about when we feel stuck and how do we get out. And like what I'm hearing in that message is stay the course. Just keep looking at the clues. Just keep going. You're going to get out eventually. Like, and what a beautiful message, especially as we're kind of starting to look at the end of the year and we're starting to say what else. And maybe it's also like, what next? I love that. Of course, now I have to ask, like, where can people go to like stay in touch with you or get more familiar with your work that want to see what you're doing and maybe bring them into their organization? Like, where can we send people?
Sure. Well, the single best way is patdwyerwastaken.com, all one word. And I tried to buy patdwyer.com and somebody bought it. So I bought patdwyerwastaken.com because it was. I mean, that's just science. That's how that works. So that's the best place to see it. Pat@patdwyerwastaken.com. Anybody. Yeah, honestly, come on. You're right. Hiya at Pat Dwyer is fine. That'll work too. Who cares? So yeah, write me a message. Let me know where you're at. Tell me, give me context as to where you heard about this. And why you know me. That would be very useful because then that like takes us like 4 less emails to figure out. But nevertheless, patdwyerwastaken.com is the single best version of that for us.
Amazing. And it's DWYER for those.
DWYER, Pat as in Patrick, but shorter. DWYER was taken.
I love it. I love that URL. It's the best. Well, Pat, thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing. Look forward to seeing you on an actual stage someday. Your magic is fire. And it's just been such an honor to have you on this platform.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. You are a delight.
All right, so as you might have been able to tell from this episode, the work that I do is at the intersection of personal growth and professional breakthroughs. I go deep into the work of how we need to look at ourselves as leaders, as being the way forward to achieve what it is we need to achieve. So whether you are looking for this support on your own, whether you want your team to learn these kinds of concepts, or your broader organization, I do this work at all different levels, from main stages, in small conference rooms, in retreats, and even one-on-one. So if you want to learn more about how I can support you in breaking through, please visit CoachTosca.com. That's CoachTosca.com. Did you know that I have a newsletter that I put out every month? If you want more motivating, inspiring content that also comes with practical tips, please sign up for my newsletter. You can do so at toscadimatteo.com/newsletter.